But here's the difference, and this is what immediately perked up my ears as a practicing physician, is when I recommended this very simple keto diet. Just eat lots of meat, eat very low carb, avoid wheat, rice, oats, and corn, added sugar, and vegetable seed oils. Immediately, in 3 months, 6 months, their A1C would not go down 2 or 3 tenths of a point, but 2 or 3 points. They would not just lose 5 or 10 pounds and then gain it back. They would lose 20, 30 pounds, then proceed to keep it off for many, many months. And I was like, man, this is right. But then I also kept getting these other signals, Jenny, like, my arthritis is so much better. Does this diet help with that? Or their blood pressure would also take a noticeable decrease back towards normal. Or any number of things. Their heartburn got better. Their dandruff got better. They're just literally hundreds of things. And I'm like, I don't think it helps that. But I mean, and so that's one of the reasons why I started to look back at old research and looking at the research kind of with fresh eyes.
Dr. Ken Berry, I don't think you need much of an introduction. Thank you so much for joining me on Meat Matters today.
It's always a pleasure, Jenny.
So I wanted to start off by just diving into your background. Where did you go to medical school, and how did you start your first private practice?
Well, yeah, so let's start at the beginning. I got my bachelor's degree from Middle Tennessee State University in animal biology with a minor in psychology. And then I got accepted to 3 different medical schools, but I wound up going to the University of Tennessee Health Science Center in Memphis, Tennessee. And then I did my family medicine residency at the St. Francis Hospital there. And then I had no intentions, Jenny, of being a primary care doctor. I was getting residency and certification in family medicine, but in Tennessee, family medicine doctors are trained very deeply and very broadly, not just to be the hypertension, sinus infection prescription writer. I did over 300 vaginal deliveries. I assisted on multiple C-sections, did scopes, did biopsies, and worked in the emergency department many, many hours as a resident. And I had full intentions of just being the ER doctor in small hospitals in this area, and started moonlighting at the Camden General Hospital when I was I guess after I'd finished my intern year, and loved it. Loved being in the ER, loved just the excitement and the adrenaline of it when something happened, because in small ERs, often you'll go hours doing nothing and then all hell breaks loose. And I really enjoyed that. I had no intentions of starting a clinic. And then every time I would see a patient in the ER, they would say, I like you, doc. You ought to start a clinic. And, we're taught in medical school not to believe that stuff, that can't help that. But after like the 500th person had said that, I'm like, well, maybe, I could do a little part-time clinic. And so started a little clinic in Camden and saw 12 people the first day, 20 people the next day, and never less than that for the next 20 years. And so they were all right. I needed to start a clinic and learned so much in those years of full-time clinic practice. And for about the first 10 years, I was doing full-time 5-day-a-week clinic and working anywhere from 2 to 4 12-hour shifts in local emergency departments as well. And so I had really 2 full-time jobs. And during that time, I started out very slender in my early 30s. And after a few years of that, I weighed 297 pounds and was pre-diabetic. And so really everything that I talk about online is things that I learned in my journey trying to reverse my severe obesity and prediabetes and a whole host of other medical things that I suffered from that just, I was in my mid-30s and felt miserable. And so as I learned that stuff, I started sharing it with patients because patients would see the difference. Okay, dude, sure, but so do you. And so my patients immediately, when I'd lost 20, 30, 40 pounds, they're like, Doc, you look great. What are you doing? And so I was a little hesitant because back then I was recommending low-carb keto, and because I hadn't learned about carnivore yet, which is the lowest carb diet of all, the least inflammatory diet of all, the most ketogenic diet of all if done properly. And so I was a little hesitant because I just looked at it as a weight loss hack. right? And so only my most severe type 2 diabetic patients, type 1 diabetic patients who had terrible A1Cs, and for severely obese patients, I would say, well, this is what I'm doing. I'm basically eating mostly meat, very, very low carb, and no grains, no beans, no sugar, no vegetable seed oils. That's what I'm doing. And so they immediately would say, can I try that? And I would say, well, I think, yeah, for sure. Why don't you do it for the next 30 days and then come back and we'll check everything and see how you're doing. And so you have to understand my mindset back then. I had not looked deeply into the physiology and the biochemistry of this. I just knew it was working like gangbusters for me and for a lot of people that I followed online. And so, I mean, what would be worse, doing 90 days of keto, which may or may not be dangerous, I don't know, or having an A1C of 14 and being 80 pounds overweight? Which one's more dangerous? That was kind of the cost benefit analysis I was looking at. And it's like, well, obviously their A1C is 14 and they're 80 pounds overweight. Of course, this is not going to be more dangerous than that. And so now, and here's a very important thing for people to understand. Primary care doctors and ER doctors, we look for signal. And what that means is when a new medication comes out and the drug rep comes to my office and details it, basically, blowing smoke up my skirt saying, oh, you're the best doctor ever. I know you're really going to prescribe a lot of this. I would always, okay, well, I've got 10 patients who might benefit from that. I'll prescribe that. And then at their 3-month and 6-month follow-up, I look for signal, meaning, are they better? Do they feel better? Are they having a lot of side effects? Did they have to stop it because of side effects? Did they get another comorbidity that they had to stop, right? So that's signal. That's what signal is. And so I'd recommended to hundreds and hundreds of my obese and diabetic patients, you need to join Weight Watchers and join the gym. That was my standard line if you were overweight or had diabetes. And I had gotten zero signal back from that. Now, what that trains a doctor to think is not, maybe that didn't work, but no, my patients are gluttons and sloths. They didn't do that. They're just laying on the couch eating Cheetos. That's what the signal I got back from. And then even the American Diabetes Association diet gene. I would print the PDF and hand it out to them when they were newly diagnosed with diabetes and got virtually no signal back. Their A1C didn't go down much. They didn't lose much weight. They still felt terrible. But here's the difference. And this is what immediately perked up my ears as a practicing physician is when I recommended this very simple keto diet. Just eat lots of meat, eat very low carb, avoid wheat, rice, oats, and corn, added sugar, and vegetable seed oils. Immediately in 3 months, 6 months, their A1C would not go down 2 or 3 tenths of a point, but 2 or 3 points. They would not just lose 5 or 10 pounds and then gain it back, like with my previous advice. They would lose 20, 30 pounds, and they would then proceed to keep it off for many, many months. And I was like, man, this is right. But then I also kept getting these other signals, Jenny, like, my arthritis is so much better. Does this diet help with that? And back then I would literally say, I don't think so. Because how could a diet help with arthritis? Because that's a different condition. That's not diabetes or obesity. That's different, right? Or their blood pressure would also take a noticeable decrease back towards normal. Or any number of things. Their heartburn got better. Their dandruff got better. They're just literally hundreds of things. And I'm like, I don't think it helps that. But I mean, and so that's one of the reasons why I started to look back at old research, even nutrition research in the 30s and 40s that were in German that I had to get translated to try to figure out what's going on here and looking at the research kind of with fresh eyes. Not just, it was calorie restriction. Well, that calorie restriction doesn't help your shoulder arthritis. That, maybe knee arthritis, maybe ankle arthritis, because those are load-bearing joints. And if you lose 20 pounds, I see how your knee arthritis could be better. But the shoulder joint, the thumb joint, those are not load-bearing. Whether you weigh 500 pounds or 150 pounds shouldn't have any difference at all on your arthritis and your non-load-bearing joints. And so I'm like, it seems like this diet is uninflammatory or anti-inflammatory. That's really weird. How is that even possible? And so I kept digging in. I started learning about ketones. I started learning about all the inflammatory markers. And oh gosh, there's actually research where these inflammatory markers are lower if you eat more meat and less added sugar, less carbs, less ground up grains. And so that just kept leading me further and further and further into the research. And then that ultimately led me into I think a question that should be natural to every doctor and dietitian is, well, what did people eat 100 years ago? What did they eat 500 years ago? What did they eat 5,000 years ago? That's probably very important because, as I mentioned previously, I had a degree in animal biology. And part of that is, what do the animals eat? What's their natural diet? And so when I use the word diet, I'm using it in that context. What should that animal eat? Not a weight loss diet. And a lot of that, because the word diet, we're so metabolically sick in modern society that the word diet has taken on a negative connotation. And people started calling keto a way of eating, a WOE, instead of a diet, because the word diet is triggering for many people because they've been on 20 different diets. And so it occurred to me, Homo sapiens sapien, we're a specific species. I wonder if we have a proper human diet, maybe, just like cows have a proper bovine diet. All animals in the wild have a diet they eat. They don't stray from that. They somehow know when to eat, what to eat, how much to eat, when to quit eating. They know all that stuff. Just intuitively, instinctually. Maybe we have a diet like that too. And so that's kind of brings us to where we are today, where I've included a lot of archaeology, anthropology, and even paleoanthropology into the message that I share with people. And a lot of mainly plant-based people will be like, oh, that's an appeal to nature. Well, it's not, actually. It's very scientifically based. It's an appeal to the past, yes, but the scientific past. We know exactly what the ancient Egyptians ate, right? We know that. It's documented. We know that for a fact. Also, the climate in Egypt and their religious practices meant that basically every person who died, unless they were a prisoner or a pauper, they got some degree of mummification. And so we have these thousands of mummies from Egypt that we can do CAT scans on and MRIs on. And so now we have all this information because guess what the diet the Egyptians ate? It's literally the low meat Mediterranean diet that we're told to eat today. And yet the Egyptian mummies, thousands of them from all strata of society, are riddled with heart disease and riddled with poor dental health and had weak, brittle bones and just a whole host of maladies they suffered from. And this is all documented fact. That's not an appeal to nature. That's saying the ancient Egyptians were not eating a proper human diet, and their body, there's evidence that their health suffered because of that. So that's kind of brings us to today.
Awesome. Yeah. So you have just years of clinical experience. You've deeply researched this topic. How did the YouTube channel become a thing?
So my wife, Nisha, who's always right, even when she's wrong, said, you should start a YouTube channel. And this was back in 2017, 2016. And I'm like, and I was a board certified fellow in the American Academy. I was like, I'm a doctor. What are you talking about a YouTube channel? Because to my age group, that kind of sounds lowbrow or kind of sounds, I don't know. That sounds kind of shady. And so one day I came home from the clinic and she said, how many people did you help today? And I was like, I don't know, 30, 40, something like that. And she's like, that's so good. I'm so proud of you. What if you could have helped 30 or 40,000? And with that one sentence, she brought up my oath that I had taken. She brought up everything I believed in. She brought up everything that meant something to me. Help as many people as you can. That's my goal, right? And I was like, damn it. Okay, fine. I'll start a YouTube channel. And so I started it. I would do a video when I was upstairs at the clinic on my lunch break or upstairs before the day started. I would think of a patient who had a question about gout or arthritis or hypertension or diabetes. And I would just act like I was talking to that patient and explain to them, this is what's going on and this is what you should do. And then I would post it on my YouTube channel. And I think the video that really blew up that put me on everybody's radar was when the U.S. News and World Report, they come out every year with the best and worst diets. And so keto, of whatever year that was, 2017, 2018, keto was the worst diet. And I just made kind of a reaction snarky video to that. And that blew up. And then I was kind of on everybody's radar because it was just so asinine what they were saying about keto that flew directly in the face of my clinical experience with hundreds and hundreds of patients and what had happened to them. And then also, of course, the ADA diet was very near the top. Remember that diet that I said I got no signal back from patients whatsoever? Weight Watchers was also very high on their list as a great diet. Remember I said earlier, I'd gotten zero signal back that would do any more than help you lose 5 or 10 or 20 pounds and then gain it back immediately. None of these diets that they were recommending, I'm like, those diets are crap. They don't help anybody. What's going on here? And that's when I started looking into the kind of the socioeconomic, political lobbying, like how are these diets ranked so high? These diets are crap. They don't help anybody. What is, and keto, really? It's the worst diet on planet Earth? Really? That's weird. Where's this coming from? And so I looked at all of the experts that they had, they had a little blurb about who they were and what they did. And I looked them up online and it's like, oh, they all have grants from Coca-Cola. They have fellowships from Kellogg's. They have, some kind of lobbying money from Kraft Heinz. And that's when I was like, really? People are recommending diets that to people who are metabolically sick and in danger of heart attack, stroke, and death. These people are recommending these diets to these people and probably knowing that these diets are not going to help them at all. That's pretty yucky. That's pretty distasteful. Wow. And so that's when I started my Twitter account and started yelling at these people like, what the hell's wrong with you? You're not helping people. I mean, you're getting paid, you're getting a check, huzzah for you. But I mean, did you not take an oath like I did? Do you not really want to help the maximum amount of people achieve the best degree of health? Is that not really your motive? Because it sure seems like it is not.
Yeah. Yeah. The web of deception runs very deep once you start to look for it, which is just so fascinating because all these people are saying, oh, I want to help people. And they're recommending, eat oatmeal for breakfast.
Let me say this. I don't think there's some huge conspiracy. I don't think there's this cabal of people who are like, let's screw everybody. I don't think that's what it is. I think that you just take the average dietitian. They were trained at a school of dietetics that was literally paid for, funded, built, and the textbooks funded by Kellogg's and Kraft and Post Heinz and General Mills. That's who that literally. And so you can't badmouth the people that paid for your building. That's just kind of human nature. That would feel distasteful to call them out because your textbook said a generous grant from Kellogg's. You get this, here's this free textbook. So it's human nature. All these corporations play on the human nature of the situation. I don't think these doctors are evil. I also don't think they're idiots. I think that they're just, they have fell victim to a paradigm, which is a way of thinking that, of course, these big corporations are not trying to hurt people. Of course, they want to make money, but they're not doing anything evil or bad or devious. And then plus the biggest researchers in dietetics, the biggest researchers in lipidology and cardiology, they also get grants from all those people too. And they're saying it's fine to have your Coca-Cola in moderation. It's fine to just have a small bowl of Lucky Charms. The School of Nutrition at Tufts said actually a bowl of Lucky Charms is as healthier than scrambled eggs. It's just stuff like that. And so what it all adds up to is that even though we are the smartest species on planet Earth, we literally run the planet. We are the one species on planet Earth that does not know what to eat, when to start, when to stop. We're completely and utterly confused and lost as a species when it comes to what is a proper human diet. And I think the profit motive has played a large part in that.
Definitely. There's so much conflicting information out there too, that for the normal person trying to weed through all of that is just exhausting. Do you still have a clinical practice?
I have a part-time small clinical practice. I just take care of people out of my home. I've got a small number of elderly folks who can't get out and don't want to go to a doctor. So I just see them. I go to their house and see them for free. I don't even file insurance because it's literally not worth the headache. being signed up for all the insurance programs. So yeah, I still practice part-time, but mainly I'm working on making videos. I'm working on writing books, writing articles, writing op-eds, stuff like that. And then the community, we have a large private community that we work in as well for people who are like, my husband won't help me. My wife is actively trying to sabotage me, right? Because I'm trying to lose weight, I'm trying to get healthy, and they keep making the damn brownies, or they keep whatever, or my family's against this. And so we started this community so people could have an accountability partner, so they could have a safe space that they could go where everybody's eating low carb or keto or carnivore or lion diet. And nobody's going to laugh at you or yell at you. And when you have a moment of weakness, they're not going to say, see, I told you that diet was stupid. They're going to say, that's okay. I've fell off the wagon before too. Let's just get right back on it. I'll help you, and let's do that. I do 4 live Q&As in there every week. We have certified coaches who do live Q&As. We have guests. We've had Dr. Westman in there, Dr. Hampton, Amanda Decker. We've had all kinds of people in there just to answer questions, because what most people, they think, I need a carnivore doctor or I need a keto doctor. And my answer is, do you really? Or do you just need a doctor that'll write your prescription if you're taking anything and order the labs you need? But really what you need is somebody who's knowledgeable and trustworthy, who will answer your questions. That's what you really need. And that's what we do in the community each and every day, each and every week. Sometimes there'll be 10 live Q&As from me and Nisha and other people in there a week. And so there's ample opportunity to get all your questions answered. And then you can use your doctor as just a local resource to get labs checked, or to get your refill if you need it, or, to have something checked for if you need that. That's what most people need a doctor for, really.
Yeah, I find that most people just have a few, big questions they need answered, and then that gets them in the right direction. And having that accountability and support is also really, really helpful. I've also heard that you were named one of the top 3 misinfluencers by, what was that, the Eat Lancet Changing Markets Foundation. Yeah. How did that feel?
So it was actually a great honor. And I think that, usually when somebody gets a label like that, they probably feel shame and embarrassment. And I think that's what the public relations company hired by the Eat Lancet people, I think that's exactly what they were going for. They were trying to shame me and Sean Baker and other people, and Nina Teich and all of us. I think it was the top 20 misinfluencers in the world when it comes to diet and nutrition, and I was number 3. But literally, I was mad that I didn't rank higher. Jenny, that was my initial reaction. Like, why am I number 3? Damn it! I need to work harder, because if you're a misinfluencer, that means that you're misleading people. That means, and so that therefore your advice by definition must harm people, right? That's what a misinfluencer would be. You're giving bad advice, wrong advice, harmful advice. But I mean, you can just look at the comments on my YouTube videos, thousands upon thousands of people saying, you saved my life. You reversed my type 2 diabetes. I'm no longer severely obese. My blood pressure is almost back to normal. Literally just hundreds, thousands of comments. So I don't really think that's being a misinfluencer. I think that's maybe showing people another way. Now, I may be a misinfluencer when it comes to big food and big pharma profits, and I think that's probably the truth of the matter. And I'm happy to be that. I'm going to try next year to be number 1 misinfluencer in the world when it comes to eating into the billion-dollar profits of big food and big pharma, because they can go kick rocks. I'm not interested in their profits. I could care less if they go bankrupt. What I am very interested in is improving the health of every single person I can reach in the world. That's my goal as a doctor who took an oath and meant it, is to do that. And that's what that's what I've been doing, and that's what I'll continue to do.
So the people that are naming you as a misinfluencer, isn't that based on the diet that's recommending like 4 ounces of meat per week or something like that?
Yeah, like 1 egg a week, 2 or 3 ounces of red meat a week, mainly fruits and vegetables, and lots of grains. Yeah, that's the diet they recommend. And that's literally the diet that got us into this metabolic mess that modern society is in. And they're like, oh no, it was the junk food. Well, let's talk about that. What are the three main ingredients in junk food? Grains, sugar, vegetable seed oil. You can make a bowl of Lucky Charms with that. You can make a jelly donut with that. You can make a flour tortilla with that. You can make a loaf of just beautiful artisanal bread with those three ingredients. Those are the three ingredients that have led us to this just terrible metabolic disease epidemic, is those three ingredients. And so those are from 2017 forward, my first three steps to adopting a proper human diet were, and still are to this day, stop all added sugar and most natural sugar. Number 2, stop all grains. Number 3, stop all vegetable seed oils. That's literally from 2017 to now. That's what I've been saying. And then there's more. Then, fill up your plate with fatty meat and eggs with the yolk. That was number 4. And so that's still to this day. If anybody has been eating whatever and not thinking about diet at all, and they have a health scare, had to go to the emergency department, and they're like, oh my God, I'm not immortal. What do I need to do to maximize my health? That's still the first 4 steps into reclaiming the good health that you deserved this whole time, but didn't even dream you'd ever be able to achieve it.
Yeah. How in are you on the 2025 nutritional guidelines? Like, what's going on with all that? Isn't that supposed to come out soon?
It's coming out soon. Nobody knows.
Okay.
I've been talking to several people at the federal level behind the scenes, trying to help this. I've been posting about this. There needs to be a low carb option, because the federal law states that the dietary guidelines should serve the health of the majority of Americans. That's literally in the federal code of regulations. And currently, 88% of American adults have at least one marker of metabolic disease. Over 50% have 2 markers of metabolic disease. They might have high triglycerides. They might have high blood pressure. They might be overweight. Their waist to height ratio may not be what it needs to be. So the majority of American adults are metabolically sick. Therefore, how do you not at least have a low carb diet option? I think low carb should be the dietary guidelines. But why not put a low carb option in there for everybody who's obese, who has type 2 diabetes, pre-diabetes, type 1 diabetes? That's the majority of the country. High triglycerides, high blood pressure. There needs to be a low carb option. And so nobody knows what the guidelines are going to say. My friend Nina Teicholz has been very good about revealing the conflicts of interest. He actually published a kind of a web diagram of each person on the dietary guidelines and how many corporate conflicts of interest they have. Some of them have 20 conflicts of interest. They're literally getting money from 10 different big food manufacturers and 10 different big pharma manufacturers. Yet they're going to objectively decide what the dietary guidelines are. Because in case your viewers didn't know, if you eat big food, pseudo foods, that's going to make you metabolically sick. And big pharma, they're not idiots, okay? They're very intelligent. They know that if you eat big food's food, you're going to need their drugs, right? And you're going to need their drugs every month, every day for the rest of your life. And so we're talking about billions of dollars on both sides, big food and big pharma. And so, of course, they're going to have their tentacles, their claws, their talons as deep in the dietary guidelines as they possibly can. And so I hope that it comes out that there's at least a low carb option, but I'm not holding my breath. That's why I'm still trying to just reach out to individual people and say, hey, there's a better way. There's a different way. It doesn't have to be like this. You don't have to be sick every day for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And the dietary guidelines, I mean, any kind of federally funded program, they have to go by those guidelines. So like in a hospital, I had a family member in the hospital last summer for a month, and the stuff that was coming on their tray was ridiculous. Full can sugar, Sprite, tons of grains and carbs. It was like pulling teeth trying to get a ketogenic plate. I made it happen, and I also cooked food and brought it in. But not everyone has that option. So having the low carb option as an option for people is vitally important just on that level.
And so here it's even more devious than that, because I've seen people post on Twitter, dietary experts say, well, nobody, the guidelines are irrelevant. Nobody even follows those anyway. And it's like, well, actually, if you'd done your homework and knew what the hell you were talking about, you would know that every preschool free breakfast and free lunch has to follow the guidelines. It has to be full of grains, vegetable seed oils, and it's always going to have added sugar. Every single kindergartner, first grader, second grader, all the way up, they have to eat the guidelines at school. The school cannot deviate from the guidelines, or they'll lose the federal funding. Every hospital, like you said, every nursing home, every prison, every jail, every single man and woman in the armed forces. You're talking about millions of Americans, and it's not optional. If you're in the Army, you got to eat what they say to eat. That's not optional. If you're in kindergarten, what are you going to do? Say, no, I want bacon and eggs to the cafeteria lady? No, you don't have that power. And so, yeah, the guidelines matter very, very much. And to people who are basically powerless, to say, I don't want a bowl of Lucky Charms. I don't want a Lunchable. I want real food. It's tough. If you're gonna eat at this cafeteria, you're going to eat what we give you, and that's it. And we have to feed you this way because the federal government will take their federal money back if we don't feed you this way. So, yeah, it's a big deal.
Yeah, really big deal. Well, fingers crossed. We'll see what happens here by the end of this year. I wanted to pivot over to some carnivore myths and misconceptions because
Sure.
You've been on YouTube forever. I've been on for 3 years, and I encounter them all the time. I'm sure you do too. One of the most common critiques that I hear about carnivore is that it's too expensive. How do you usually respond to that?
Well, if you're not currently eating a carnivore diet, if you're eating a high carb diet, then it looks like it would be super expensive because you assume that you're going to be eating the same amount of food and eating as often on carnivore that you would eat in your standard American diet. You assume, well, God, 3 carnivore meals a day with 3 carnivore snacks in between, that'll cost $100 a day. I can't afford that because the average person is not a dietitian. They're not a physician. They're not a PhD researcher. They don't understand that when you eat a diet that's full of healthy animal fat and healthy animal protein, that you stay full many hours longer during the day. They don't understand that meat is so nutrient dense, meaning that it's full of vitamins and minerals and fatty acids and amino acids your body needs, that once your body's gotten that full belly from a carnivore meal, all the nutrition is surging through your bloodstream, and your body's like, oh my God. And it's called satiation, not only physiologically, but mentally. Like, I'm so satiated. I'm so full. And then you wind up, you don't need any snack 2 hours from then. And you also don't need a meal 4 hours from then. And so what most people on carnivore wind up doing is eating either 1 meal a day or 2 meals a day. And if they might have a little evening snack or they might not, you wind up eating about half of the amount of food that you would eat on a standard American diet or the ADA diet or the AHA- diet. You just wind up eating less food. Therefore, you need to buy less food, and you can find meat on sale, right? You can find ground beef on sale and buy 10 pounds at a time, break it up into 1 or 2 pound servings and put it in the freezer. You can buy eggs. You can buy 3 dozen eggs at a time at the supermarket. Cans of sardines are cheap. Cans of tuna, cans of salmon are cheap. They're not perfect, but they're still very, very healthy foods. You can eat carnivore for the average person, and many people on Twitter and Facebook, they actually post, here's my receipt from the supermarket. Back when I was eating whatever, it was $300 a week. Now it's $100, $150 a week. And I am fuller now, happier now, healthier now than when I was buying all that extra junk that really was just puffed air and puffed up profits for the big food manufacturers. Now I don't spend nearly as much money, and I stay fuller longer, and I'm much happier and much healthier.
Yeah, I've had the same experience. I was able to feed a person for $100 for 1 month, and I live in a, affluent area. It's not cheap, but I was able to do it with all the sales and the different meats I was able to find. It's 100% possible to do it. What's your thoughts on processed meats? I always get questions. Well, processed meats aren't allowed. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think processed meats are fine, because anytime you say, oh, processed meats are bad, compared to what? That's my next question. And so if we're talking to somebody of limited means, and very often I am, right? Because poverty and being close to the poverty level, that's actually more common than not in the United States and in many other countries. These people can't afford $27 a pound ribeye. They can't afford that. And so that's who, if you're a carnivore purist and you're like only grass-fed, grass-finished, panda massage, that's the only thing that's truly carnivore, you're literally leaving out 95% of the population. They cannot do that. They cannot afford that. So are you really helping? Or are you kind of virtue signaling that you've got a good income? That's kind of what it feels like to me and to many people of limited means. And so if all they can afford is the cheap ground beef at the discount supermarket, and they're like, I heard this was bad. And then I'm like, compared to what? If you didn't buy the cheap ground beef, what would you have bought instead? And they're like, I guess a loaf of bread and maybe some cereal and I guess some orange juice. I'm like, right. So the cheapest ground beef is better for you than that, right? And now let's talk about hot dogs and bologna, because that's all a lot of people can afford, and cans of potted meat and cans of Spam. Is that bad? Well, compared to what? If you can afford $22 a pound something, fine, get it. You should stimulate that economy. But if you're like, dude, I can't afford that, then okay, I can either afford a pack of hot dogs or I can afford to just, I guess, buy chips and whatever. You're going to tell me the hot dogs, which are basically ground up meat, salt, and spices. That's what a hot dog is. Or bologna, ground up meat, salt, spices. What's the bad part right there, right? So yes, if all you can afford is hot dogs and bologna and Spam and potted meat, that's still some of the healthiest food you can buy at the supermarket. And I know that triggers a lot of my carnivore purist friends. They're like, no, that's got nitrates. Look into nitrates. That's not a big deal. I've got a YouTube video about that. So many of us have these islands of ignorance in our sea of knowledge. Everybody is susceptible to this. Like, a lot, but then there's this one thing you still don't know what you're talking about. And that's very common. It's ubiquitous. Over the years, I've found several islands of ignorance in my sea of knowledge that somebody would leave in a YouTube comment and be like, dude, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, wait, what? And I would go look it up. I'm like, holy crap, they're right. Okay, I didn't know that. I've seen islands of ignorance in some of the most preeminent MD and PhD researchers in the carnivore, keto, low-carb, primal diet space, because we don't have enough hours in the day to know everything about everything, right? And so bacon, oh my God, Dr. Berry said bacon's a health food. What the hell's wrong with him? Well, what is it? Bacon is not even ultra-processed. It's sliced up meat, salt, and spices. How is that an unhealthy food, right? And so many people they're like, yes, I'm carnivore, but bacon? What? Come on, just calm down, stop getting emotional, because that's what the other side wants you to do. They want you to get emotional. They want there to be infighting. They want the carnivore people to hate the keto people and the keto people to hate the low-carb people. But what I'm trying to teach people is there's a proper human diet spectrum here. And whether it's low carb with meat or keto with lots of meat or ketovore with even more meat or carnivore with all meat, those are all proper human diet spectrum choices that are proper, that are healthy, and that are better than any alternative out there. And so I really hope that we can all start talking about a proper human diet. And if my friend Paul Saladino is eating lots of meat and lots of fruit and even honey, that's still better than what he could be doing, right? If you adopt his diet, that's going to probably be better for you than the diet you were eating. Or if you go to the other end of the carnivore spectrum and you listen to my good friend, Dr. Chafee, all these guys I'm friends with all these guys, right? And you're like, no, only grass-fed, grass-finished, ruminant meat, maybe. Okay, great, fine. That's still a proper human diet. We're still friends. Or if somebody's been carnivore for years and they're like, I had to add back in 10 or 20 grams of sweet potato or Irish potato or rice. Okay, you're still eating low carb or keto. We're still friends. That's still close enough to a proper human diet for me that how am I going to try to cancel you for that? What the hell? What's going on here? This is not a religion. This is a movement. This is a revolution, definitely. But it's a big tent revolution. There's room. If somebody just loves their sweet potato, who am I to fault them? I don't care. Eat your sweet potato. Just try to keep the carbs as low as you possibly can. If you can't afford the butcher box subscription, then buy your meat at the discount grocery. That's still a health food. Could it be better? Sure, of course. Anything could be better. But is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. I suspect that currently there's no meat on planet Earth that is as perfect as the meat from 1,000 years ago, because we basically soiled the planet. We spoiled a lot of the grass and the soil. So my mantra is do as good as you can. Do as good as you can do. Do the best you can. And then let it go. Go outside and play. Yeah, that's literally the answer.
Yeah, it shouldn't be an anxiety-driven thing. Find what works for you, whole real food, meat heavy as possible, and you should be good to go.
100%. Amen. That literally, I could write a nutrition textbook and it'd be 1 page long and say just what you just said. And if I gave that textbook to every dietitian, every doctor, and they just went, well, shit, that sounds simple, but I mean, okay, that's the new textbook. And they just started teaching that. Do you understand? We would revolutionize in the entire modern world. The epidemics of type 2 diabetes, of prediabetes, of metabolic syndrome, of obesity, of all these conditions would just plummet just from your one sentence textbook. That would change the health of the entire world.
Yeah. And isn't it crazy that it's just that simple?
It's almost as simple as cows eat grass, period. Like that's it. The cat, unless you want to put them in a feedlot and make them artificially fat and artificially marbled and also make a lot of money. If you just wanted to feed a cow, proper cow diet, it would be cows eat grass, the end. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. The end, literally, right? and the human diet is just that simple, but it's been made very complex and very muddy. And I think it's a good rule of human nature that anytime somebody's trying to make a topic much more complex and complicated than it needs to be, there's a profit motive involved. Oh, you need my supplements. Oh, you need this prescription. Oh, you need this, whatever. No, you don't need any of that. You just need to eat a proper human diet and then go outside and play.
Totally agree. What is your take on diet drinks? Because I get this question all the time, like Diet Coke, things like that.
So I know people that I've known for years from the keto community who lost over 200 pounds, and they drank Diet Coke every day of that journey. Okay. So Diet Coke is less bad than a regular Coke. I think that anybody that wants to argue that, you're getting off in the weeds, because the most harmful substance in Coke is the sugar, is the high fructose corn syrup, and also the cane sugar. Some of the Maha victories are like, dude, come on. You took the high fructose corn syrup out. Now you're using organic cane syrup. That's maybe 1% less bad. It's still pure sugar. Why are you crowing about that? That's not a victory. You shouldn't be putting a feather in your cap over that one. That's a minor detail. Same with the food dyes. Yeah, they shouldn't be in our food, but if you get them all out, is that going to revolutionize and transform the health of modern society? No, it's not. It's not. That's not going to move the needle in any meaningful way. It's not going to give us any huge signal that we can go, aha, look what we did. Right. And so I just, anytime emotion becomes involved, Anytime anxiety becomes involved, anytime, it's way more complex than that, that's a red flag. You should go, why, that's weird. Why are you getting emotional about this? Why are you trying to cancel somebody? Why are you trying to make this so much more complicated than it apparently is? Everybody should see an immediate red flag anytime they hear one of those things going on.
Yeah, definitely. What about coffee? That's another hot button topic.
So one of the principles of a proper human diet is that it has to be something that human beings have been eating or drinking for more than 12,000 years. So that's my definition. And so by my definition, coffee is not ancestrally appropriate. Yeah, take a sip. I'll take a sip right here too. But human beings have been drinking coffee in some form for thousands of years, not 12,000, but thousands of years. It's been around for a long damn time. And there are actually many proven benefits. I don't know if you just saw the new study, because for decades, if somebody has atrial fibrillation, AFib, we're like, you can't drink coffee. Got to stop the coffee, right? Well, there's a new randomized trial that just came out. Very good, well done trial that shows that not only does coffee not cause AFib, it also doesn't worsen AFib. It actually improves AFib. So so many doctors out there reading that study right now going, oh my God, what? And that was an island of ignorance, because it makes sense. Coffee's a stimulant. It seems like an AFib heart is overstimulated. So therefore coffee must be bad for that. But that's one of the times, it's a great example of when you just make an assumption. And it just seems so self-evident. Coffee cannot be good. It can't. It has to be harmful for people with AFib. Nope, it's not. And it's actually beneficial. And so I drink coffee every day. I've done my 90-day no coffee challenge so everybody can shut up. I did that. There were no magical benefits that I attained from my 90 days of no coffee. I did 90 days of decaf. I did 90 days of no coffee at all. So shut up. No, I didn't have any magical benefits. I just like coffee. I like the ritual of making the morning coffee. I like sipping on the coffee. You can do way worse things than coffee. And so I think if somebody's currently drinking fruit juice or Coke or Pepsi or Dr. Pepper or Mountain Dew, and you just sip on it all day, one of the biggest improvements you can make in your health is to switch immediately to diet, whatever it is. And shut up, grow up. I know it doesn't taste the same. We're not 5 years old, okay? You can learn to like Diet Dr. Pepper. Shut up. I did it. You can do it. And then a great hack is, after you've been drinking the diet soda for a few months, you can start buying some kind of sparkling water like Gerald Steiner or Topo Chico or Pellegrino, and start cutting your diet soda half and half with the sparkling water. And what I did, I used to be a Diet Dr. Pepper, Diet Mountain Dew. I had to have it every day. And I thought of this. I'm like, well, sparkling water's got that little bite, right? So I'm going to start doing half and half. And when I did that, it literally didn't change the flavor at all. And I'm like, God. And so that just tells you how intense the flavor of diet sodas are. And so I drank that half and half mixture for months, and then I kept doing more water, less Diet Dr. Pepper. And finally I just got tired and I just now drink sparkling water. And so I live on coffee and sparkling water. That's what I drink. And I don't drink ever a diet soda or regular soda, not even the Zevia, not even the keto approved. I just don't, because and it's that ancestral principle. Jenny, what have humans done for the longest period of time on planet Earth? That's probably very healthy for you. And there's 4 things that we know for a fact: that we have breathed air our entire time on this planet. We have played in the sun our entire time on this planet. We've drank water. After we weaned from our mother's breast, we drank water for the longest period of time. And we've eaten meat. It is documented in the paleoanthropological, even before we were Homo sapiens sapien, we were eating meat, lots of meat. And so to say that meat is not an ancestral food is folly. To say that meat is bad for you is just ignorance, maybe well-meaning ignorance, but ignorance nonetheless. We have been eating meat our entire time on this planet. By definition, that means that it cannot be bad for you.
Yeah. Let's talk about dairy. I've heard you mention that some people tolerate raw dairy better than conventional dairy. Why do you think that is?
Now, let me be very clear about this. Dairy is a very complex topic. It's very complicated, and I didn't make it that way. It just is. And so there are religious connotations and overtones. Obviously, every human, when they're a baby, should drink dairy, right? They should drink their mother's milk. Nursing is the best, hands down. There's no close second. Breast milk is best. And I'm not being mean. I'm not judging. I'm just saying that is a demonstrable physiological fact. So there's a period of our time when milk is obviously ancestral, but then after a certain age, 4, 5, 6, 7, it becomes not ancestral anymore, because before 12,000 years ago, no human drank milk ever after they were weaned from their mother's breast. They didn't drink cow milk. They didn't drink sheep milk. They didn't drink goat milk. Only about 8,000 years ago did we start doing that. So it's not ancestrally appropriate to consume dairy as an adult. So there's that, and that's provable. You can't argue that. All of us drank milk from the beginning of time as infants and children, toddlers, young children, but none of us ever drank it other than, maybe an occasional anecdote that we won't get into, but not on the daily. We just didn't do that. So there's that you have to contend with. Then you have to contend with, raw milk has not been homogenized, which I think really mucks up the fat profile of milk. It hasn't been pasteurized, which absolutely messes around with the microbiome profile and some of the enzymes in the milk. No doubt about that. It's unquestionable. Now, where did pasteurization come from? Because everybody needs to read about the history of dairy, because it's fascinating. It will break your heart. It will piss you off, because when people back in the 1920s lived in New York in the slums, they had to drink something called swill milk. And it was basically, they would keep cows in the basement of buildings. Never did they eat grass. They would eat the moldy leftover brewer's yeast from the brewery up the street that was making beer. And that's what they fed them, and just refuse and junk. And sometimes the cows would be so sick with tuberculosis and other things that the cows couldn't even stand up. They'd have to prop the cow up to milk it. And now, as if that wasn't bad enough, then they would dilute the milk with water. And then they would add some plaster of Paris or some other white powder to make it look like milk again. And then it was never refrigerated. They didn't have modern refrigeration back then. And so that's what the poor little babies whose moms couldn't breastfeed because they had to work because they were poor, that's what they would drink. And so there were kids dropping dead left and right. It was terrible. It was awful. And so the federal government said, we got to do something about this. This is terrible. And they were right. That was terrible. But in modern society, we have refrigerated transport and a refrigerator in every house. We have small local dairies who know every cow by name, who treat every cow like a family member, who are meticulously clean. If that raw milk is properly sourced and fresh, it is probably better for you than drinking homogenized pasteurized milk. That's probably true. And I still don't think adults should drink milk. I think dairy should be an occasional treat, if at all, because it's not ancestrally appropriate. We don't have the machinery. It's going to cause some level of inflammation in your body. Now, it may not be enough to register. You may not be able to put your finger on it and say, oh, it's the dairy. But it's just going to do that. And so about a third of humans have evolved lactase persistence, right? So 2/3 to 3/4 of all adults on planet Earth have lactose intolerance. That's not a disease. That's the default setting for human beings. But we have evolved 5 different times. We have been so trapped in, we either drink the milk or starve to death, that we have encouraged our lactase genes to stay persistent into adulthood. And so there's 5 different populations that now can do that, and that's about a third of people on planet Earth. And so that doesn't mean that it's optimal. That means you can tolerate it a little more. And so I make everybody mad with my dairy stance, because everybody loves dairy. And I make the raw milk people mad because I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry, but it's still not ancestrally appropriate for an adult. No cheese is ancestrally appropriate. And let me just say, full disclosure, I love all forms of dairy. I've never had a dairy I didn't love, actually. If I could eat nothing but dairy, I would. I freaking love it. So this is not coming from a guy who's like, I've never liked milk. I used to drink a gallon of milk a day in high school. I loved it. And I still would if I could get away with it. But milk has one purpose for a mammal, and that is to make them grow and gain weight as quickly as possible. And it is meant for juvenile mammals. It is not designed for adult mammals. That also goes for all the gym bros that are drinking colostrum and buying breast milk. This is also not ancestrally appropriate. Maybe it helps with whatever your goals are, but it's going to cause some degree of inflammation in your body somewhere. You're not built for it.
Interesting. Yeah, I can't do conventional dairy with the Hashimoto. So I did an experiment with the raw. I can tolerate the raw, but I still don't consume very much of it. Number one, it's really expensive. Number two, I don't want to gain a bunch of weight because I can also eat a ton of it. I love it.
Oh man, could live on it. Love the stuff. Yeah,
so
love
good.
it. Good.
Yeah, totally. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about GLP-1s because so many people it's all the rage right now. How have your opinions on GLPs shifted at all over the past few years? What are your thoughts on them?
They haven't really changed. What's changed is the GLP-1 agonist. That's what's changed. We've had this on our menu as a doctor prescribing medication since 2018. When liraglutide came out. And so we've been able to prescribe this for years. And I have prescribed GLP-1 agonists for years. And the big three right now that everybody's heard the names is Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro. And so they work. There's anybody who argues that they don't work, you don't know what you're talking about. They do work. And they work better than really any other thing we've got on the pharmaceutical menu for weight loss and for improving type 2 diabetes. There's no other medicine like it out there. Now, here's the problem. I think it's fine, and this has been my stance since 2018. I think it's fine to use them short term at low doses, right? Kind of as a head start or a get out of jail free. So if you're that guy I talked about earlier that came to me who's 80 pounds overweight and has an A1C of 14, you are in imminent danger. You are at a very precarious place. And so, yes, 100%, we're going to talk about low-carb, keto, carnivore. But why would I not want to basically pull you away from the cliff edge a little quicker, right? And so there's absolutely a place for a low dose of Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, maybe 6 months. But the high doses that they're promoting now, there's no long-term studies showing that they're safe. Like I said, we've been using low dose since 2018. We pretty much know that at that dose, this is pretty safe. Not a lot of bad stuff happens. But these high doses, and then to imply, as the president of the Obesity Society did, that all this obesity is genetic, that's that red flag I was talking about earlier. That's horseshit. Any MD, PhD that says that the obesity epidemic is genetic, they're either ignorant and they cheated on their tests, or they've got a profit motive. There's just no other way. You can't get around that, right? So this obesity epidemic is not genetic. It's just that all of our food is adulterated with the things that you avoid on a proper human diet. And so I think it's fine if somebody is severely diabetic or severely obese to use these at a low dose for 2, 4, 6 months to help get them out of the burning house, to pull them back from the edge of the cliff, while a good doctor or a good dietitian is teaching them about a proper human diet and the power that comes from this. Because here's something I meant to mention earlier, but I got sidetracked by my own voice. Doctors and dietitians believe that patients are never going to follow a diet. And they believe that in their heart of hearts, based on the evidence of their years of practice of never seeing a patient actually win on any dietary intervention. But here's why. Because those dietary interventions don't work long term. They're not sustainable long term. Basically, every dietary intervention out there, except for low-carb, keto, ketovore, carnivore, and line diet, are semi-starvation diets, Jenny. You cannot tell a mammal okay, you need to starve yourself and then do so for the rest of your life. That'd be like saying, okay, I want you to start breathing 5 times a minute, and then I want you to do that for the rest of your life. You'd be like, what? Wait, what? That's literally as ignorant as telling a grown human, I need you to eat less than you want to eat, and then do that for the rest of your life. That's the cure. It should render you speechless when you get that epiphany, like, holy crap. How are you going to tell people, oh, eat less than your appetite tells you to eat? Do that for the rest of your life. And if you don't do that, you're just a failure. You're just a glutton. You're just a sloth. You suck. You're a sinner. Whatever adjective you choose to use. That's what doctors and dietitians have been doing to their patients for decades. And so when you start recommending a proper human diet that you actually see signal from, and you see this every day, Jenny, on social media, a doctor, a physician assistant, a nurse practitioner, a dietitian, they're now on fire for keto or carnivore, right? They're standing on the street corner preaching because the signal they see when they teach somebody how to eat a proper human diet and then turn them back out in the wild. And then they come back 3 months, 6 months, 12 months later, and they're like, oh my God, yes, I love this diet. They've never heard that from any other diet. The DASH diet, the ADA diet, the Mediterranean, the fill in the blank, Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, it doesn't matter. Nobody says that because it is not sustainable. It's lifelong semi-starvation. And nobody, no matter how rigorous and religious and fervent they are, nobody can semi-starve themselves for the rest of their life. It's just not doable. And that's why everybody fails. And that's why a proper human diet works. And that's why when a doctor does try it in a few patients, it feels like now they're an apostle or they're a preacher because it's like, God, I've never seen a diet do this ever. And so I want to teach everybody about it. When that's the diet you're recommending, you see a ton of signal come back from your clients or your patients. And then you're on board. You're like, yes, this is the way. This is the way.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to sing it from the rooftops. I have some specific questions from my viewers. I let them know that I was going to be talking to you. So just some specific fast ones. For someone that's been carnivore for a really long time, they're fasting insulin, their vitamin D, their glucose is dialed in, but they're still struggling with high blood pressure, even on low dose meds. Yep. What's your advice?
So the first thing you have to understand is that there's a percentage of the population who really has essential hypertension. Even though you're doing everything right, it's about 1% to 5% of people. Your blood pressure is still going to be high enough you need to take a prescription. Okay. That's number one. This is also a multifaceted thing. Number two, the 120/80 recommendation is bullshit. Okay. The American Heart Association was bought off by Big Pharma to say that. Even the American Academy of Family Physicians still says to this day, if your blood pressure is under 145 on the top and under 85 on the bottom, you're normal. You're fine. And that's the guidelines I go by. I think that's what every doctor should go by. And so many people, their blood pressure is 135/80, and they're like, well, I'm on 2 blood pressure medications. And I'm like, why? Well, the doctor said, yeah, okay, that's based on bullshit guidelines, okay? So then there's also that. Then there's also, it takes months, sometimes a year or two for people to metabolically heal. And so it may be 2 years from now, you just started keto or carnivore today, it may be 2 years from now before you can come completely off all your blood pressure medication. It may take that long because it took you decades to get in this shape, right? It may take you a year or two to get back to optimal metabolic health, and you may need a blood pressure medicine during that time, or even 2. But what you're going to notice is as months go by, you're going to be able to lower the dosage of your blood pressure medication. And then finally, there's this thing called secondary hypertension, which there's a list of conditions that'll give you secondary hypertension that many doctors either never learned or forgot because secondary hypertension is rare. Okay. There are adrenal conditions, there are kidney conditions, and there are pharmaceuticals that can give you secondary hypertension, meaning you're doing everything right, diet and lifestyle, but your blood pressure is still way too high. You've got an undiagnosed secondary hypertension cause, or You're just one of those 1 to 3% who have essential hypertension, or you just haven't healed yet. Any of those things could be true, but also varying degrees of all the three of those things could be true. And so you got to have a good doctor who can check you for causes of secondary hypertension. You got to have a good doctor who can say, oh gosh, it's one of your pharmaceuticals you're taking for your mood, for a psychiatric issue. That's what's causing your high blood pressure. Or you have essential hypertension, because 80% of the people who are told they have essential hypertension, which means idiopathic, we don't know, you just have it. It's metabolic. It's hyperinsulinemia. It's chronic inflammation. It's fluid retention caused by their diet. And so the vast majority of people, their blood pressure is going to come down, but there's a few who won't.
Okay. Could elevated visceral fat levels play a part in that?
Yeah, to a degree. Absolutely. Yeah, to a degree. And that's because fat is not, it doesn't just sit there and piss you off when you look in the mirror. It actually is a very metabolically, endocrinologically active organ. And so, yeah, it could be that until you get your body fat percentage down to a certain percentage, your blood pressure is going to stay high. And that's very frustrating for a lot of people, because some people, they come to keto or carnivore to reverse their high blood pressure. And then after a year, it's better. They were taking full dose of 3 meds. Now they're on a full dose of 1 med or 2 low doses of 2 meds, but it's still not gone. And that's very frustrating. And that's why we have to get into the weeds and talk about it, because it's like dairy. It's not just black and white. There's multiple facets.
Yeah. What about like magnesium deficiency, elevated ferritin, things like that? Could that be drivers as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we know that magnesium will bring down blood pressure. We actually give intravenous magnesium to pregnant women with preeclampsia. And one of the things it does is it brings down their blood pressure, right? So yeah, magnesium is absolutely a thing. The high ferritin thing, I think that it's even more nuanced than the blood pressure thing, or even the dairy thing. I think that as we start to look at diet and lifestyle and health with fresh eyes, and therefore eventually do some new research, I don't think that an elevated ferritin means what most doctors think it means. There are many, many doctors out there that if your ferritin's high, they'll say, oh, you've got iron overload. You need to cut back on the meat. That's ignorant. Okay. That's just, if your doctor said that, that's ignorance revealed, is all that is. There are hundreds and hundreds of things that can make your ferritin go up. Okay. Ferritin's also an acute phase reactant. It can go up if you have an infection or inflammation. Hundreds of reasons why your ferritin's high. I don't think that a slightly elevated ferritin is always dangerous or bad or needs to be treated. I think that the many, many cases, it's literally irrelevant. It's meaningless, but it scares people. And then you've got gurus out there on the internet that really scare them. And then they're like, oh my God, right? And so you've got all these oh my God moments caused by people trying to sell a program or sell a supplement, sell a pseudo medication. And it's just like, I wish all y'all could just get a good paying job so that your profit model wasn't scaring people to get them to buy something from you, because that's very distasteful. It's kind of junky that's your profit model, scaring people. And then, oh, I've got this line of supplements that'll fix that. That's kind of shitty. Don't you agree? And so I'm sorry if, I know a lot of people sell supplements. I can't tell you how many millions of dollars I left on the table. I've had so many supplement companies come to me and like, you don't understand. If we came out with a Dr. Berry PhD line of supplements, you could literally make $10 million every year. I'm like, I could care less. I'm not interested. So yeah, there's that. But I understand money's money. You got to pay the bills, but we got to stop scaring people.
I agree. When you look at a ferritin test, what would be one that you wouldn't worry about? Like, what's the max?
So if it's 10 or 20% above the normal range for that reference lab, obviously I'm going to ask you some questions. I want to know this, and this. It's virtually never iron overload. So if anybody's doctor, and I guarantee you at least one person listens like, yeah, my doctor said I was getting too much iron from the red meat. There's a specific set of tests that you have to check for iron overload. And if your doctor just checked a ferritin and told you that, your doctor's an idiot. If your doctor said you have hemochromatosis because your ferritin's high, your doctor is really an idiot. There's a specific genetic testing you do for hemochromatosis. And if your doctor hasn't done that, they have no damn idea if you have hemochromatosis or not, or if you have iron overload or not. They have no idea. They're blind. It's literally the blind leading the blind in that situation. So ask that. That's why you're never out of line as a patient to ask your doctor questions. You're never out of line to take something you printed off the internet. In my opinion, that's the sign of a good, motivated patient who wants to get healthier. If that makes your doctor mad, if that frustrates your doctor, that's a huge red flag that you need a new doctor.
Yeah, definitely. You should be able to ask any questions that you have, and you should feel empowered and not gaslit or made to feel bad if you're asking those questions.
Right. It's just like if you go to your accountant and you're like, hey, I read this article in Fortune. It says that I can deduct this on my taxes. What if your accountant just went, look, just shut up. I don't want to see that. I'm the accountant. You just do what I say, or you'd be like, okay, bye. I'll get another accountant right now. But yet, for some reason, people feel like that they have to tolerate that from their doctor. Your doctor's just like your accountant or just like your mechanic. They're a learned partner, okay? They're a consultant. They're not your daddy. They're not your boss. They're not your drill sergeant. They don't get to ever put up the hand to you, ever. And if your doctor's done that, run, don't walk, and find a new doctor.
Definitely. That's great advice. With all of my carnivore people that I interview, I always finish up with some rapid fire carnivore questions. Are you down?
My answers may not be rapid fire, but yes.
We'll see what happens. What's your number one tip for a new carnivore?
Eat as much meat as you can. Eat till you're full. Do not portion control. Do not calorie count. Do not restrict. You can eat until you're comfortably stuffed if you're eating a proper human diet for your current physiology. And I think for many people, a carnivore diet is where they need to be, at least for now. Maybe not forever. But 90 days, beef, butter, bacon, and eggs, you're never going to go wrong with that. But eat until you're full.
Great. What is your favorite carnivore food?
It's embarrassing. Ground beef and scrambled eggs. Like literally, I take 2 pounds of ground beef, throw it in a pot. Nisha hates it when I do this because it's not Instagrammy at all. And then when the beef's 90% done, I crack about 6 eggs in there and stir it up. So I don't even know if that has a name or not, but that's my go-to literally every day. My daughter, Abby Grace, is helping me with my videos and stuff. And she's like, cook something else. That's boring. I'm like, you don't understand. That's literally what I eat every day.
Yeah, it's so good though. Simple, tasty, fills you up, and you're good to go.
Good to go.
Yep. Okay, so this doesn't have to have carnivore answers, but it can if you want to. If you were stuck on a desert island, what 3 things would you bring?
Beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. Literally.
There you go.
Yeah. And then obviously I'm on an island. I'm going to eat all the fish. I'm going to eat all the shellfish. I think they're perfectly carnivore, keto, low carb acceptable. I think they're fine. I think they're ancestrally appropriate. I think that fish doesn't get as much credit as it should. I actually also think, and this may be important for some people, depending on your genetics, where you came from, where your people have lived for the last 5,000 years, your carnivore may need to be mostly seafood. And I know that freaks a lot of people out, but it's like if your family lived around the Mediterranean for the last 8,000 years, how's anybody going to tell you that your carnivore diet or your keto diet may not need to be full of seafood?
That's a really good point. I wonder, I come from like the British Isles, Scottish, English, but that's a giant island. So perhaps I need to add more seafood.
Maybe, right? These are all things that we should be able to experiment. And since we're such a big tribe, we should be able to share our experiences in our tribe without being canceled or yelled at or denigrated or made fun of. What the hell? What's going on? Why is this happening? And so if Jenny said, I've never thought of that. I'm going to try a month of mostly seafood, mostly fish, carnivore, and just see what people are going to come after you and be like, unfollow. Why would you want Jenny to do that experiment? Yeah. So then she could share the results with you. Why would you not want that?
Yeah. Yeah, I do a ton of N-of-1 experiments, so honestly, I think people would expect that from me. But I get what you're saying because people Carnivore police are like out in force. They're like, stop doing all these
Just
things.
please, guys, come on. Let's be a big tribe that loves each other and wants the best for each other. And if somebody finds that they are healthier on a little different place on the proper human diet spectrum than you guys can still be friends and hang out. It's okay.
Exactly. So true. What is the most common mistake that new carnivores make?
Oh gosh, there's probably several, but the one that comes to mind is thinking that as long as you're eating mainly meat, the condiments are okay. And this usually it's people who are coming straight from standard American to carnivore. They're like, no, I'm eating 2 pounds of beef a day, but it's like, yeah, but you're putting a cup of Heinz ketchup on it. That's not carnivore. I'm sorry. No, you're still eating a high carb diet by doing that. But they don't know better because they're not dietitians. And health coaches need to understand people don't think about diet all day, every day like we do. They have lives. And so you have to, as a coach, you have to ask them, what do you put on your meat? Send me a picture right before you eat it, that kind of stuff, because people don't know. Or they'll have 2 pounds of ground beef and they'll have a 12 ounces of fresh squeezed non-GMO orange juice, and they're like, I didn't know. And they don't know. And they mean well, but you have to help people. And so just stuff like I was eating carnivore, but my definition and your definition were not the same.
Right. I've encountered a weight loss stall on carnivore. What would be your advice to get the scale moving again?
Yeah. First and foremost, you have to understand weight loss pauses and weight loss stalls are a normal, expected part of the weight loss journey. It's not just you, it's every single human on planet Earth. If you're in the process of losing 20, 40, 80, 60, 240 pounds, you are going to have weight loss stalls. It's partly a safety valve. Because in the past, 10,000 years ago, nobody ever lost weight. And if you were losing weight, that was a huge red flag that something's bad wrong. Either there's a famine or you fell off the cliff and broke your leg. Something bad had happened, right? And so when you're losing weight, your body does not know you're doing it on purpose. It just knows we're losing a lot of body fat percentage here. And body fat's what gets you through the winter. Right? It's normal to have some degree of body fat. That's also important for people to understand. You're not going to look like a ripped bodybuilder on the cover of Flex magazine. That's not the goal. You're going to have some fat. And so your body's going to stop that process for a month or 2 or 3. In some cases, a year. My good friend Cindy, she would pause for a year. She lost over 200 pounds. And then it would pick back up. And I think there's 1,000 different little experiments and tweaks. You can bump up the fat, bump up the protein, add back some carbs, fast for longer, fast less, add back a meal, take away a meal, all kinds of different things. But I've got a YouTube video that really I think is important that helps people understand this. And I try not to plug the YouTube channel, but it's called The 13 Reasons Why Your Weight Loss Might Stall. Because some of these reasons are undiagnosed medical conditions, right? You may have a thyroid, adrenal, sex hormone problem that you didn't know you had that your doctor missed because they weren't checking all the labs they should be checking. And so it's called The 13 Reasons Why Your Weight Loss Might Stall. And so if you've had a stall, first of all, if it's been 2 weeks, shut up. That's just part of it. You're fine. Just hush. But if it's been 3 months or longer, then you should watch my video called The 13 Reasons Why Your Weight Loss Might Have Stalled.
Cool. I'll link that in the show notes so people can access it easily. Knowing what you know now, what would you do differently if you were starting carnivore today?
Well, so let's say back in 2015, when I weighed 297 pounds, if I knew everything I know now, then I would have just went straight carnivore immediately because it would have knocked about 2 years off the process, right? But would I have remained 100% carnivore every single day? Probably not. But I would not have cheated with Cheetos and Ding Dongs and Pepsi. I would have cheated on carnivore with keto, right? So every now and then I would have some vegetables. Oh my God. Or I would have some fruit, or I would have, God forbid, have some honey on something every now and then. Because I would know that's not the end of the world. If I have a Friday night dinner that included 1 piece of bread and with a teaspoon of honey on it, that's not the end of the world. Right? I would know that starting the next morning, I'm going to be right back on carnivore and it's going to be fine long term. Also, I would have recognized immediately that I was a sugar addict, and I would have admitted that back then, because there are some things I don't need to touch, because if I do, I will fall off the wagon. And there are many people like that. And so just knowing those two things, I can go straight carnivore. It's safe. I can do it right now. And literally within 6 months, I would have had that weight off. Instead of taking 2 years, I would have done that immediately. And I would have recognized sugar addiction as a real thing. And I'd never need to eat these other things. Even if it's my birthday, even if it's our anniversary, I'm not eating that shit, because that will put the monkey back on my back.
Yeah, so true. Frozen mangoes for me. Can't have them in the house.
Yep.
Can't have them in the house. Kids love them. I can't have them. I'll eat them all. So finally, if you were to go back and give one piece of advice to 20-year-old you, what would that be?
Don't be an idiot. It wouldn't even be concerned with diet. It would be like, all those things you're planning on doing and think you're going to do, don't do any of that. That's all stupid. And also unethical, and also immoral, and probably some of it's illegal. So just stop all that and just get on the straight and narrow right now. That'd be the number one thing I would tell 20-year-old Ken Berry.
Yeah. Oh, I was insane when I was 20. Lord have mercy. Well, yeah. Dr. Berry, this was awesome. You were actually the reason why my husband and I started Carnivore. So, you're the whole reason this is now my career.
Well,
so
you're doing such great work teaching people and helping people understand and letting people ask questions and do experiments without being judgy about it. I love that about you, that you're like that. I think more people ought to try to emulate that. And
well,
you know who I'm looking at right now. I'm not going to say any names.
We see you. Well, thank you so much. And thanks everyone out there for tuning in to Meat Matters with Jenny.
Eat your meat.
Eat your meat.